The context. Shinobazu is a partnered Twitch streamer who managed VTuber talents under the content creation agency Flask.gg, an independent agency that claimed to offer various forms of support for independent creators. Things seemed to be just fine until April 8th, 2025, when a VTuber known as aPlotTwistVT, or just Plotty, posted a massive 210-paged Google Doc that went into extensive detail about her experiences with Shino and Flask, as well as including stories of 4 other individuals who were negatively impacted by Shino and Flask. The document would be very well received by the community, and Flask's website would be later taken down as a result. The story would have ended there. However, on September 29th, 2025, a VTuber known as BibblyDarling, one of the victims involved in Plotty's Google Doc, would call out Shino and his girlfriend, AmaelisaTV, for planning to attend the upcoming TwitchCon, and linked the massive document to encourage others to be wary of the two if they're going to this year's TwitchCon. The accusations. The document covers a substantial amount of allegations across the 5 individuals that are condensed into 12 major bullet points, with each individual diving deeper into specific allegations due to experiencing them more from Shino. Some of these allegations include taking accounts hostage, various forms of mistreatment and abuse, and doxing. The document claims that its purpose is to inform and warn others about Shino's quote, volatile behavior, and to insist that he return the IP of Bibbly's accounts that he was holding hostage. The experiences. Plotty signed with Shino in December of 2023 for a month trial, to which she found it to be pretty successful. She would sign a 3-month contract with Shino afterwards, which would be followed by a longer contract that would expire at the end of January of 2025. Plotty would state that, apart from the long disappearances of Shino, things were relatively okay until October of 2024, where Shino would claim that, after Bibbly's departure, Bibbly was stealing money from him and talking badly about other talents, resulting in Shino taking control of her YouTube account and eventually deleting it. At the time of the document's publishing, Shino had full control of Bibbly's business email, NSFW Twitter account, and TikTok account, and would refuse to hand them over. He would ask the talents to not speak to Bibbly for, quote, our safety and his. Plotty would state that Shino would send screenshots of himself with groups of managers who supposedly looked up to him as some hero. This would be done whenever Plotty was, quote, misbehaving, implying that Shino could and would blacklist her from working with mutual friends or large creators if she left or argued with him. Plotty would talk about a large content server called VSMP, providing details on how she ran the server alone since its conception until approximately early 2024. She would state that, on February 9th, 2024, Shino would keep disturbing her work on VSMP throughout the day, and would later pull Plotty into a private call before her stream. The call would consist of Shino reprimanding her for not interacting with Amaelisa's debut post, and accused Plotty of being a horrible person. When confronting him the next day, asking to respect her boundaries, he would get more defensive overall. Plotty would also state how Shino would claim 50% of ownerships of her projects due to his quote-unquote contributions, and would threaten to take one of her major projects for himself if she left, claiming that she and her show was quote nothing without him. He would also threaten to take the majority of revenue that would come out of the major project. Plotty would go into detail about Shino's constant mentions and slandering of previous talents, stating how he would seize accounts and payouts from them, discussing personal lives of talents, and even doxing certain talents in response to them calling Shino and Flask out. When a talent and her friend were roofied at a party hosted by Flask and Blarb at TwitchCon, Shino allegedly laughed it off, claimed that she was stupid and lying, and threatened to blacklist her from future events and working with mutual connections. Plotty would state how Shino's behavior and slander has led to multiple sponsorship opportunities being lost, including companies such as One Shot, Aura Culture, Advanced GG, Gamersubs, and other unnamed companies. Since her departure from Flask, Shino allegedly went on a massive slandering campaign against her and tried to remove any and all evidence of communications with each other. As of the document's publishing, Plotty is owed 54 edits from Shino and Flask, but predicts that she'll never receive them. Guiltythorn signed with Shino in December of 2023, and, similar to Plotty's initial experiences, Guilty found the first few months to be pretty successful. She felt that signing with Shino, who was her friend before signing into Flask, was going to be a great move for her, until it wasn't. Guilty would state how inconsistent Shino was when it came to deadlines, timings for meetings, and overall communication, which led to inconsistent promises and products that were either really well made or just plain awful. While she didn't witness the incident at TwitchCon, she did hear from Shino and the talents about what happened, with the latter confirming the events and the former downplaying them. One of Guilty's main points in her statement was her negative experiences with Amelisa, who was technically a talent who worked with Shino and the agency. Guilty would state how Amelisa would constantly spread lies and talk awful about her to other talents. Guilty would emphasize the favoritism Shino had with Amelisa, and how he would constantly defend her when mistakes were being made. Guilty would also go into detail about how Shino would constantly take credit for stuff other talents have been doing, and how he would constantly ignore individuals who were late with payments, treating them, quote, like a child. When he demanded assets from Guilty, such as a copy of her fully rigged model, and she refused to give it to him, he would threaten termination. She would include a call of this confrontation. It isn't stated what, if anything, happened after Guilty's departure, but based on Plotty's post-departure experience, Guilty, just like the others, likely faced similar slander from Shino. Orcatsukki's statement is mostly comprised of screenshots between her and Shino across various instances, as well as additional information written by Plotty, including his refusal to provide a copy of Orca's contract that was never sent in the first place, refusing to proofread certain clauses in her contract, which was allegedly generated by ChatGPT, and his claims of Orca stealing money from Shino. The document claims that Shino bragged about blacklisting talents and sharing personal information about them to others, but stated that these were word of mouth rather than through text. Shino would start deleting messages between him and Orca, important documents, and a notebook server that was filled with ideas and references for Orca's streams. Nii's statement would start off with a brief summary that contained 10 bullet points of accusations. Some of these accusations include lack of communication, failing to meet contractual obligations, and various forms of mistreatment and abuse towards Nii. Nii met Shino through a mutual friend, as she was interested in the idea of being a talent for some independent agency that would hopefully have good management, unlike her previous 3 experiences. Just like with the others, Nii had a trial period with Shino and Flask, and initially had a successful experience. Nii would open up to Shino about her past issues with previous managers, to which he reassured her that he wouldn't be like those managers. Unfortunately, Nii would state that she would go through a repeat of everything she's experienced in the past, with some things being new and even worse during her pre-onboarding process. Nii would state that Shino would assign a temporary manager to help her get into onboarding and officially start as a Flask talent. However, it would turn out that this temporary manager, who apparently was Shino's executive talent manager, had no idea that Nii even existed in the first place, and would only find out through Jaden, a lead moderator and assistant of Flask. Shino would eventually hear about this, and would plan to have a meeting with Nii, the temporary manager, and Amelisa. However, it would turn out that because they prioritized Bibbly's onboarding over Nii's, she would never actually get a meeting. She would confront Shino about this, with the intent of trying to know whether Shino even wanted to work with her in the first place or not. Shino would reply with a very long statement of his own, which essentially boiled down to him not taking accountability for his mistakes, changing the terms of their original agreement, and indirectly suggesting Nii to voluntarily leave instead of pursuing her requests. Nii would make a detailed response to him back, essentially stating that no progress was being made despite his claims that things would be getting done, and how he's invalidating her personal feelings, concerns, and previous poor experiences with management. Nii would state that this situation would be handled over a call, but would end up being a quote, big nothing burger. 2 months later, Jaden would ask Nii how the pre-onboarding process was going, to which Nii stated that Shino wasn't given any additional information, and planned to leave unless the onboarding was going to start before 2024. Jaden would confront Shino about this situation, where Shino would be pretty dismissive about it, stating how Nii was allegedly gaslighting them all, and how Shino thought that Nii sent Jaden to badger him about onboarding. Nii would allegedly get gaslit by Shino over her not being patient over her pre-onboarding process, and claimed that Nii was oversharing with other people regarding her frustrations. 4 days later, Shino would drop Nii from the agency, and would completely ghost Nii when she asked for various documents. Bibbly's statement would be divided into 8 distinct sub-documents, with the first one briefly summarizing her experiences with Shino, and the remaining sub-documents showcasing specific categories of negative interactions between the two. Briefly going through them, Bibbly would include instances of tortious interference, lack of proper communication, failure to provide promised clips, various accusations of theft, unsolicited disclosure of private information, conflict between Bibbly and a moderator, and instances of mental health ignorance. Regarding her summary, she would state that her initial time with Shino was generally positive, up until fall of 2024. She stated that Shino had access to the majority of her accounts due to him helping her with setting them up, what she thought was a normal thing for a manager to do. Things would be fine in the beginning, until he would take her accounts hostage, slander her to others, and isolate her from friends and co-talents due to disagreements. She would include a variety of screenshots as evidence of Shino's theft of accounts, IP domain, and deletion of her resources in her business server. She would also include both her old and new contracts from Flask, as well as a cease and desist letter her lawyer sent to Flask, demanding that they return Bibbly's accounts, stop their campaign of defamation against Bibbly, and to refund all payments made during September of 2024. The aftermath. Just like with Plotty's original original post, Bibbly's post was generally well received by the community, with many expressing their support for everyone involved. Someone asked why Bibbly didn't mention the specific party locations outside of TwitchCon in her video message, to which she stated that the hosts refused to take action unless there was actual legal cause, and chose not to publicly reveal the locations out of respect for the hosts, but would be more than willing to privately disclose it. It would turn out that both Shino and Amelisa saw Bibbly's post, as they opted to untag themselves from Bibbly's post, which is a feature that Twitter allows people to do, though it wouldn't stop people from just simply searching up their accounts. No responses have been made from either individual. It is fairly unlikely that they plan to make a response. Just like with everyone else, do not harass anybody mentioned in this video, but do be careful if you plan to go to TwitchCon, as instances of spiked drinks and criminal behavior have occurred beyond the Flask event.